So in this test, what we're going to do is take a look at authentication for functions. This is built-in authentication. I've got a couple of functions here. I'm going to use a local run command, and this is going to start up this web server, and I'll be able to open it in a local browser. And you can see that I can put a username in here, my email address, and some message. So latest Helm chart is broken. Hit submit request, and that is now stored in the memory of the function. And so this is the kind of thing that we perhaps do not want to have open on the internet or on our local network. I have another one which isn't as sensitive, but again, we may just want to keep this private for some reason. This gets the latest version of a get release. So local run only runs on my machine. I can actually deploy these to Kubernetes, and if I uncomment this environment variable .auth, this causes the functions to only be invoked if there's somebody in the cluster that happens to have a role that allows them to invoke the function. So what we'll do now is we will deploy these to my cluster, testing cluster. I'm using a temporary registry for these images. It's a little bit on the slow side, but they'll be deployed in a short period of time. I'm then going to log into the OpenFaaS dashboard, and we'll see we have, for instance, like this web function. So it's deployed, it's healthy, it should have some logs when the new version gets deployed. But if I was to go to the gateway and put in web, I'm getting an error message. Same for GH version. But if I go through the dashboard, the GH version, this one actually can take a JSON payload, this one I created earlier. I'm going to hit send, and we get a response back. So what the dashboard is doing here is I'm already authenticated into the dashboard, so it knows who I am. It's used my role to get a token to invoke the function. What we've been building is a demo where if I change to tunnel 06SIO, which just happens to be where my auth proxy is exposed, when I'm already logged into my Google Mail, it just works. There's nothing to think about. Single sign-on is checked. But if I have an incognito browser, I actually have to log in here to access the function, and I can do that through the browser. Again, we also had the GH version function, and that is now also loading for me over the tunnel.06SIO. That's where I'm exposing this auth proxy from Kubernetes. Put a message in here, works just fine. Come back to it, it's still there. Great. Now, there was another request that we had from a user to be able to use curl to access these functions, but using the OpenFaaS authentication. So it said authorization bearer. That's what we were missing. So we generated a static token earlier, and we can take this and send it to the auth proxy. And in this case, we've got this GH version. We want to do a post owner OpenFaaS repo FaaS CLI, and we may just put the correct content type whilst we're at it. JSON input, and there you can see it's worked for us. And if you put an I on there, we'll see the various headers that we get back from OpenFaaS, but the actual invocation time there was very, very short. It was a very quick function. even though it made a HTTP call to GitHub to get this version. Now, if I was to use that static token against the normal OpenFaaS gateway, exposed in a different URL, it doesn't work. It will only accept a JWT. And so we have this auth proxy, which is sitting in the middle, if you like. That could be what you expose to the internet, and it gives you two modes. One is you give it a static access token, and you can then assume the role of the auth proxy for the purpose of that invocation. If we take a look in our Kubernetes objects, make this a bit bigger, we can see there's a CRD in OpenFaaS. Our issuers that it's defined. We should also have our policies and our roles. So here we have some roles. I've got one for key cloak. There's the one for the auth proxy. And so this uses a Kubernetes service account that's assigned to the pod to assume a role in OpenFaaS. In this case, it's gonna take the policy rather of auth proxy. So we go for policy, and then we can see that that is allowed to invoke any resource. But we could restrict it further. I had a policy here that I created during some earlier testing that would only allow me to invoke the env function and no other function through the auth proxy. But this is a pretty reasonable rule to have. And then that is again bound to the service account of the auth proxy. So if we were to look at the deployment for this, we'll see service account auth proxy. Along with this, we have a projected token here. And this is how we get the identity from Kubernetes. We say this is for the gateway. That is then sent to the gateway by this auth proxy in that circumstance. What is quite nice is that when you go through the web flow like this, you're actually using your actual identity and any policy that's associated with your identity for the invocations, not an assumed one. So I think I am assuming root user, yeah, and root user is allowed basically to do pretty much anything, including invoking any function. So when I'm in, I can do what I want. But you might have a role for a manager that can only invoke functions in a certain namespace or functions with a certain name. That would look a bit more like this. Or you may have power users that can invoke everything. Now, we mustn't forget that you can actually do a lot of this through the UI, the existing UI. Once it's deployed, go into a namespace, and if a function for some reason needs authentication, like this one does because it has the environment variable, we can send it and it will work. However, if we find that on the internet, it wouldn't work. Okay, well, hopefully this has been useful. If you've got any questions, I'm sure you might have many, go have a look at the documentation first of all. There is quite detailed information here about how single sign-on works, identity, these new custom resources, some nice pictures, and then more specifically, the function authentication, and it is very easy to turn on. We look back at our stack YAML, it was just a case of adding that environment variable. Okay.